You've been exhausted for months trying to make God's plan work faster. You've been strategizing, controlling, praying for specific outcomes, and losing sleep over things that were never yours to fix. After years of doing loans for Christians, I can tell you why. You're doing God's job instead of yours. Obedience is your job. The outcome is his job. And most of us have those two flipped. I'm not standing over you on this one. I'm standing right next to you. I'm in my own storm right now, and for 18 months, I've been trying to do God's job for him. I've been trying to force outcomes he never asked me to control, while completely missing the daily obedience he was actually asking of me. What I want to walk through today is what your job actually is, what God's job actually is, and what happens when we finally stop confusing the two. Most of us are exhausted not because of our situation, because we are trying to do two jobs at once, our job and God's job. Doing God's job is what is killing us. So let me tell you some of the things that I'm struggling with, and they potentially could be things that you're struggling with. Losing sleep over your mortgage payment, running worst case scenarios in your head, rehearsing conversations with people you have not talked to yet, trying to force a deal to close. That is the job description of God, not you nor me. Your job is small, specific, and today. God's job is big, unknown, and stretches across your whole life. When you take on his job, you burn out. When you stay in your job, you have peace and quiet. What your job actually is, what God's job actually is. I'm struggling with this too, guys. I watched a borrower this month spend 3 weeks stressed out about whether the appraisal would come in high enough for the property. They lost sleep. They called me every day. When the appraisal came back on the day it was scheduled, it was exactly where we needed to be. 3 weeks of exhaustion trying to control something that was never theirs to control. That is God's job. What your job actually is. Your job is obedience, not big, flashy obedience. Small, daily obedience. Show up, do the work, tithe, steward the little. Say yes to small assignments. Our job today in this storm, pay your bills, tithe on what you have, do the work in front of you, tell the truth about your finances, be present with your family, respond to the promptings that you already got yesterday and did not act on. Your job is never to make the outcome happen. Your job is to do the next right thing today. Micah 6, verse 8. And what does the Lord require of you? To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Notice how small that assignment is. Nothing about controlling outcomes. The size of the assignment is the whole point. God gave you a small daily assignment, not a lifelong strategic plan. What God's job actually is. God's job is outcomes, growth, timing, provision. Which door opens and which door closes. What he does through the small obedience, you already did today. God's job, the growth. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 3, verses 6 through 7, I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the growth. Paul did not decide when the growth happened. He did his job. Apollos did his job. And God did his job. God's job, the timing, Proverbs 16, verse 9. In his heart, a man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. You get to plan. God gets to establish. You do not get to do both. God's job, which door opens. For the past 18 months, God has closed so many doors on me, and God was telling me, not that one. Keep obeying. I'm working. When we try to force outcomes, we're not just exhausted. You are in God's way. He cannot do his job when you're trying to do it for him. Powerful, strong. Stay in our lane. I struggle with this on a daily basis, but staying in our lane and understanding what we need to do on a daily basis. Here, guys, I want to talk a little bit about me, my testimony, my 18-month journey of really doing God's job, what it's looked like for me, and how it's starting to shift. My storm started out with, God, if I do this, please do this. And I started making promises. Okay, God, I'll do this. Can you please make this go away? Then I started to shift to a point of, God, I know I need to change because what I'm asking for has not changed my situation. So please help me understand what I need to change and what I need to do. And that step there was where it started to shift. And I realized that I was not being obedient. And I needed to start focusing in on today and not worrying about outcomes. God is our shepherd and provider. In my head, I would believe that. But realistically, in my heart, I did not. I did not follow any of that whatsoever. I was really focused on controlling the outcomes and taking my pain away. And it was me doing God's job for him in neglecting the small obedience he was actually asking of me. What does obedience look like daily for me? Tithing every check, no matter what. Stewarding what is small and being able to help others that are in my current situation. Every single morning I wake up and ask God to use me. Use me to help others. Always asking to show up for others in helping them. Doing this podcast, even I don't know how the storm is going to end. That's God's job to figure out. My job is to be faithful today. And I'm starting to sleep better since I stopped trying to be both people. I have peace. I have faith, and I know God will provide. From the lender seat, every single week I see confusion play out. The borrowers who are exhausting themselves, trying to control outcomes, versus the borrowers that are doing the small work and let God handle the rest. The borrower who calls 3 times a day, trying to force a closing timeline, versus the borrower who does the paperwork, sends what you ask for, and lets the process work. Same tools, same lender, wildly different peace levels. The one borrower is exhausting themselves to death, is really trying to do God's work. The one at peace is doing their job in staying in their lane. Guys, this week, ask yourself 2 questions. What is God actually asking me to do today? That is your job. And what am I trying to control? That is not mine. That's God's job. Take one thing off the second list and put it back in his hands today. You're not exhausted because your situation is too hard. You're exhausted because you're trying to do 2 jobs at once. Your job is obedience. God's job is outcome. When you try to do God's job for him, you burn out and you get in his way. Stop taking on what is not yours Do the small, faithful thing in front of you today and let God do the growth. Drop a comment below and tell me what outcome you've been trying to control that you know is actually God's job. I read every single comment. Once you stop doing God's job for him, you start to see something else. The problem in front of you was never the punishment. It was the setup for the miracle. That is the whole point of the last episode right here.